All right, now the Finance Minister's shortest budget speech was today. 1 hour 48 minutes in 2021. In 2020 it was 2 hours 42 minutes. 2019 was 2 hours 15 minutes. So till date, well, that's trivia. It was one of the shortest budget speeches. But in this short budget speech, I want to quickly cut across to my colleague Treti Narula, who's getting us the complete breakdown from the newsroom. Treti, break it down for us. As you went through this budget, what are the highlights? Where do you think the government could have done better?
The highlight definitely, Preeti, would include the healthcare expenditure on the back of this pandemic that has seen an uptick of 137% on a YOY basis. So there is an enhanced focus coming in for healthcare. I think infrastructure has seen a humongous push coming in. The development is going to be on fast track as well. The big concern here is that while the expenditure was there and while the finance minister, as expected, has given out an expansionary budget, the fiscal deficit is going to be to the tune of 7.8% of the GDP going forward, which is a expansion in this fiscal deficit target, and that is going to be difficult to contain in the financial years to come after this fiscal year gets over. So while we are seeing a lot of impetus, and which is a much needed boost and fillip coming in for the economy, because the economy required money in the hands of the end consumer, and all these spends only indicate more level of job creation and more money coming into the markets. So net-net, I think even India Incorporated was quite happy with the budget as far as the common man is concerned. I think there would not be much of a change with the, and rather there is no change as far as the middle class is concerned as well. And the other point I'd like to focus on, Preeti, is the modernization of agriculture and increase of farmers' income, which is coming in the backdrop of the farmers' stir that we're seeing. And there is priority being given on social programs and healthcare being the top priority of this government, Preeti.
Treti, do stay on with me. Let's cut across to our guests who are joining us on the show. I have Barnik Maitra, Managing Partner and CEO. I have of Arthur D, Little India and South Asia. I have Pradeep Mishra, CMD, REPL and Infrastructure Expert. I have Neeraj Bhagat, Private Equity and Venture Capitalist. Mr. Bhagat, let's begin with you. For somebody who deals in private equity and venture capitalist, how do you look at this budget?
You see, first of all, when it comes to the benefits for the startups, so ultimately one more year has been added. So now ultimately there are two benefits for the startups. One is that, if there is a capital gain on any residential property and you invest in a startup, approved startup, then you get the 54 GB benefit. Similarly, the startups, there's a tax incentive for 3 consecutive years out of 10 years. So if you incorporate it for another 1 year by before 1st April 2022, then also you get a 3 years consecutive holiday. So I think that's a good sign, and an ecosystem is developing in India whereby more and more startups will come. And I think it's a good for venture capitalists also. They can invest into startups, and they can reap the startups can reap the benefits of the taxation, and that more 1 year has been added. So I think the budget has been slow most on that infrastructure spend, which is going to increase the economy of the country. And that's a good sign and a welcome step for the country.
Mr. Mishra, on the outset, it does seem, at least where housing is concerned, and many people are bothered where affordable housing is concerned, it seems that it might get cheaper.
Yeah, for the housing, for the affordable housing, it's good, and it helps the people who are interested in buying the low-cost housing, as well as the infrastructure. Also, a lot of money is pumped in the infrastructure, and which will ultimately help in creating new jobs and flow of money in the market.
Stay with me. I want to cut back to Treti. Treti, break it down, because even though where the middle class is concerned, we've got this, really nothing quite has changed. The tax slabs remain the same, but where affordable housing is concerned, that is something that many have touched upon. That could in fact get cheaper. How?
Well, we have to read the fine print for that, Preeti, on the affordable housing, because it's a niche area in the budget. But yes, there is a fillip given in as far as the affordable housing component is concerned in this particular budget. I will be honest with you, I haven't seen the fine print as far as the affordable housing part is concerned.
All right, Treti, stay on with me. Let's cut across back to Mr. Maitra. Mr. Maitra, what do you see in this budget that could work? And what is that you see in this budget that could have been worked on?
Cool. So I think one of the most important things to note is the backdrop fiscal deficit figure, which was 9.5%. I think the finance minister has been pragmatic, not trying to cut the fiscal deficit. 4% in one
We seem to be having a problem with your audio connect, Mr. Maitra. We're going to try and come back right to you. But let's quickly move on and we'll come back to our guest. We're going to keep coming back to our guest there. And let's just get you the highlights where the budget is concerned. Now, the major allocations, where have they gone to? Let's take you through that. 54,581 crore, housing and urban affairs. 73,932 crores to health and family welfare. 93,224 crores to education. 1,10,055 crores to railways. 1,18,101 to roads, transport and highways. 1,31,531 crores to agriculture. It's interesting because, you know, if you look at the fine print where the agriculture allocation is concerned, MSP is a big part of it, something which has been a bone of contention with farmers of North India concerned. Meanwhile, 1,33,690 has gone into rural development, 16,654 crores, home affairs. 2,56,948 crores, consumer affairs, and 4,78,196 crores to defense. I want to go back to Chaiti, my colleague who's still with us. All right, we're going to try and get back to Chaiti. Let's cut across to our other guests who are with us. Mr. Neeraj Bhagat is with us. Mr. Bhagat, what to you is the biggest highlight where this budget is concerned? We did talk about affordable housing. We did talk about infrastructure.
You see, besides that, you know, there is an ease of doing business. A lot of proposals have been made for a ease of doing business. Now, you see, the tax audit, you know, which was earlier 5 crores, it has been expanded to 10 crores. Similarly, you know, it's for the tax disputes, now that there will be faceless ITATs. Again, that will help in, you know, helping the tax disputes to be solved easier. Similarly, you know, there have been measures to have a more tax base. There were, you know, there was report of a media circles that there would be a COVID cess that would be levied, which has not been levied, and that's a welcome step. And the government has measured whereby there could be an increase in the tax base. So there are a lot of measures in the tax slabs, and there are a lot of measures in the proposals whereby the tax base would increase. I think that is a welcome step, and that will also help in increasing the tax base and the tax revenue of the country.
Right. Okay, Mr. Maitra, you know, the question when it comes, do you reckon, because it's, you know, one of the main issues is how it's been a bit of a disappointment where taxation is concerned. Would you agree?
No, I don't think there is a big disappointment. I think the biggest surprise is that there is no increase in taxation. I think given the fiscal deficit, a lot of pundits were expecting an increase in the taxation. I think the government has tweaked around on the margins to increase a few cesses on petrol and diesel, but in general, I think the government's played a pragmatic role in only not touching the direct taxes and tweaking around with the indirect taxes.
But Mr. Maitra, now, you know, that whole deal, are we going to look at in terms of, you know, taxation and the ultimate result of that? Petrol, is fuel going to get more expensive?
I think fuel will get more expensive. So I think it will get expensive by around 4 to 5 rupees. And that will have an impact on consumption and may hit the middle class wallets a bit. But it's not a big change. I think given the expansionary effect of the budgets and the spending on infrastructure, I think there'll be enough velocity in the economy to make up for this slight increase in spending for the middle class.
Well, one would hope so. Stay on with us. Meanwhile, the budget was special in many ways as it's presented amidst the pandemic. So what does the Union Budget 2021 have for the common man? Let's begin with what gets cheaper. We told you what's getting more expensive, fuel for one. Now, the government has cut down custom duty on gold and silver, making precious metals cheaper. Goods made of steel, iron and bronze have also become cheaper. Solar lanterns and solar scrap have also got cheaper due to reduction of custom duty. But what will pinch more in common man's pocket is imported mobile phones and chargers. Materials made of imported cotton and silk all have become costlier. Edible oil, imported stones to get costlier. Auto parts, solar equipment also will get costlier as custom duty has been raised on them. All right, let's cut across back to Pradeep Mishra. Mr. Mishra, in talking, let's break it down on what will work and what will not work. A lot of things will seemingly get expensive because there's no impact on taxation, but indirect taxation, there's a lot of stuff which we are going to be paying more for, especially when the middle class comes into play.
Yeah, especially the housing sector, they are expecting that input credit or GST will be allowed in this budget, and which is not allowed. So that will impact the costing of the housing project. Same way in the commercial project also, the input credits are not allowed there. So the construction cost will go up as far as the housing is concerned.
But Mr. Mishra, then how do we differentiate what we were talking about earlier when we say that affordable housing will get cheaper, but all in all, it's going to get more expensive? How does that stack up against each other?
The cost for the customer will be reasonable. The tax benefit and other thing is there for the customer, but for the developer who are doing these projects, because of high steel price and GST, no input credit allowed for the company who are in this business, the construction cost will go up, but for the customer, the purchase price will go down, will be cheaper.
All right. Okay. Thank you for breaking it down for us. I want to cut across back to Chaiti because we're talking about, there's a lot of jargon which comes in where a budget comes into play. But when you really break it down and come down to the brass tacks of it all, what is it really going to be? What is life going to be? Are we going to get more money in our pockets or is it going to be lesser? Chaiti, when we talk especially about direct and indirect taxes, where does it leave the middle class or even the upper middle class in this country?
So first I'll address your question about direct and indirect taxes, and then I'll also give out a clarification on the petrol and diesel and the farm cess that has come into play and whether or not it is going to be making it more expensive or not. First, let me just tell you, in direct taxation, there is no change. So it is status quo as it was left last year. So for the common man, if they're hearing this, there is going to be no changes in the direct taxation. And in the indirect taxation, the market was expecting, India Incorporated was expecting some sort of a simplification to come in, a direction on simplification. After all, Preeti, you have to remember, this is the job of the GST Council and the state governments come into play. But the budget can always provide direction on that front. You've got 5 tax slabs today. You have to bring them down. Everyone, all the experts were expecting these tax slabs to reduce, and also the highest one being 28%. That should have been reduced so that there was more disposable income left in the hands of the end consumer. But the budget at this point of time has not given out a direction on tax consolidation or reclassification of the goods falling under various tax slabs as well. Now, coming to your point on petrol and diesel, I did hear one of your panelists on it as well. I just want to tell our viewers that the farm cess has been imposed on petrol and diesel, and many believe that this is going to, lead the petrol and diesel prices to rise. The answer is no. Your fuel price is going to remain unchanged. And let me explain to you why your fuel price is going to remain unchanged. Because the basic excise duty, which is the BED, and special additional excise duty, which is SAED rates, have been reduced. Those have been reduced, and farm cess, which is the AIDC, has been imposed. So overall, the consumer is not going to end up bearing any kind of an additional burden on the back of this particular move. But unbranded petrol and diesel, which is the unbranded fuel, will be attracting an excise duty of 1.4 and 1.8 per litre. But for you and me, it's not like the petrol prices are suddenly going to see an uptick because it's been very well adjusted. Coming back to the taxation front, it is a sort of a relief for middle class because while people expected the tax slabs to increase and taxation, direct taxation to increase, that has not happened. So that's a relief in that sense. Indirect taxation, I think everyone was expecting slightly more direction coming in from the finance minister at the end of the day.
All right, Chaiti, thank you there for clearing out that confusion because there's a lot of talk about, say, fuel increasing where the prices of fuel is concerned. So Chaiti broke it down on how, in all probability, that's not going to happen because it's been adjusted. But meanwhile, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also announced a mega boost for Indian healthcare sector. Viewers, we are in a pandemic still. And this is a budget which was released in a pandemic. It's given us a lot of foresight in terms of what needs to be done, which successfully fought off a global pandemic. The Prime Minister's Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana will now ensure 64,180 crores in a period stretching the next 6 years. Nirmala Sitharaman further added that the main intervention under the scheme will support 17,000 rural, 11,000 urban wellness centres. The Finance Minister added that the budget outlay for health and well-being is 2.23 lakh crores in 2021-22 as against the budget expectation of 94,452 crores. Now this marks an increase of 137%. Nirmala Sitharaman also said she's allotted 35,000 crore rupees for COVID fight and vaccines and can give more if need be. She revealed that 2 more COVID vaccines are in the pipeline.
A new centrally sponsored scheme, PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, will be launched with an outlay of about 64,180 crores over 6 years. This will develop capacities of primary, secondary and tertiary care health systems, strengthen existing national institutions and create new institutions to cater to detection and cure of new and emerging diseases. The pneumococcal vaccine, a made-in-India product, is presently limited to only 5 states. It will be rolled out across the country. This will avert more than 50,000 child deaths annually. Honorable Speaker, I have provided 35,000 crores of rupees for COVID-19 vaccine in this year 21-22. I am committed to provide further funds if required. So the budget outlay for health and well-being is 2,23,846 crores in this BE 21-22 as against the BE of only 94,452 crores, and it marks an increase of 137%. The details of the same are at Annexure 1 of the speech.
Meanwhile, the defence budget, including the outlay for payment of pensions, is increased to 4.78 lakh crores for 2021-22 as against 4.71 lakh crores. Since the Ladakh standoff began, the Ministry of Defence has spent about 20,000 crore in unbudgeted emergency requirements. The amount was spent on to conclude a large number of fast-track weapons procurement contracts. The Finance Minister asserted that a lot of power has been given to the service chiefs when it comes to procurements. The outlay for purchase of new weapons, aircrafts, warships and other military hardware has been increased to 1.35 lakh crores. That's a rise of 18% over last year.
The budget allocation in 2020-21 was 1,13,734. It has gone up to 1,35,060, which is an increase of close to 20%, which is a substantial increase.
All right, with that, I'm going to go into a quick